Hi, welcome to Fish. First I seek Him, and my name is Linda. So, what does the Bible mean that we are not to judge others, right? We hear a lot about this stuff. Man, this is one of the big topics that believers and non believers just ping pong it, don't they? Back and forth, back and forth. Well, let's go to the source. Let's go to the Bible. Let's go to Jesus. And Jesus' command not to judge others, right, could be the most widely quoted of his sayings, right? It really is. And even though it's almost invariably quoted in complete disregard of its context, here is the scripture. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. Matthew 7:1. Now, many people use this verse, both believers and non-believers, in an attempt to silence their critics, interpreting, right, putting their own personal opinion on it, interpreting Jesus' meaning as you don't have the right to tell me that I'm wrong. You just don't. And taken in isolation, Jesus' command, do not judge, well, it does, right? It does indeed seem to preclude all negative assessments. And however, there's much more to this passage than those three words. What a concept. Gee, you mean when you take scripture out of context and you could put a spin on it and use it for your opinion and weaponize it against someone else? All right, I'll calm down. The Bible's command that we not judge others does not mean we cannot show discernment. Immediately after Jesus says, do not judge, he says, do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to the pigs. Matthew 7:6. And a little later in the same sermon, he says, watch out for false prophets. By their fruit you will recognize them. Verses 15-16. So how are we to discern who are the dogs and pigs and false prophets unless we have the ability to make a judgment call on doctrines and deeds? Jesus is giving us permission to tell right from wrong. Now hang in here, you'll see why. Also, the Bible's command that we not judge others does not mean that all actions are equally moral or that truth is relative. The Bible clearly teaches that truth is objective, eternal, and inseparable from God's character. Anything that contradicts the truth is a lie. But of course, to call something a lie is to pass judgment. To call adultery or murder a sin is likewise to pass judgment. But it's also to agree with God. When Jesus said not to judge others, he did not mean that no one can identify sin for what it is, based on God's definition of sin. And the Bible's command that we not judge others does not mean that there should be no mechanism for dealing with sin. The Bible has a whole book, called Judges. The judges in the Old Testament were raised up by God himself, Judges 2:18. The modern judicial system, including its judges, is, guess what, a necessary part of society. In saying, do not judge, Jesus was not saying anything goes. I'm going to repeat that. Do not judge. Jesus was not saying anything goes. All right? Elsewhere, Jesus gives a direct command to judge. Stop judging by mere appearances, but instead judge correctly. John 7:24 or 7:24. I'm on a roll today. Here we have a clue. I'm just going to keep going. Here we have a clue as to the right type of judgment versus the wrong type. Taking this verse and some others, we can put together a description of the sinful type of judgment. And here we go. Superficial judgment is wrong. Passing judgment on someone based solely on appearances is sinful. John 7:24. It is foolish to jump to conclusions before investigating the facts. Proverbs 18:13. Simon the Pharisee passed judgment on a woman based on her appearance and reputation, but he could not see the woman had been forgiven. Simon thus drew Jesus' rebuke for his unrighteous judgment. Luke 7:36-50. Hypocritical judgment is wrong. That's my favorite one. Jesus' command not to judge others in Matthew 7:1 is preceded by comparisons to hypocrites, Matthew 6:2 and 16, and followed by a warning against hypocrisy, Matthew 7:3-5. When we point out the sin of others, while we ourselves commit the same sin, we condemn ourselves. Duh. Romans 2:1. Harsh, unforgiving judgment is wrong also. We are always to be gentle toward everyone. Titus 3:2. Some of us forget that. It is the merciful who will be shown mercy. Matthew 5:7. And as Jesus warned, in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the same measure you use, it will be measured to you. Matthew 7:2. Another judgment, self-righteous judgment, is wrong. We are called to humility, and God opposes the proud. James 4:6. The Pharisee in Jesus' parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector was confident in his own righteousness, and from the proud position, judged the publican. However, God sees the heart and refused to forgive the Pharisee's sin. Ouch. Luke 18:9-14. And lastly, untrue judgment is wrong. The Bible clearly forbids bearing false witness. Proverbs 19:5. Slander no one. Titus 3:2. Christians are often accused of judging or intolerance when they speak out against sin. And that's true. That happens a lot. But opposing sin is not wrong. It really isn't. And holding aloft the standard of righteousness naturally defines unrighteousness. And it also draws the slings and arrows of those who choose sin over godliness. Now, John the Baptist, for example, incurred the anger of, I hope I don't do too much of a hack job on his name, Herodias, when he spoke out against her adultery with Herod. Mark 6:18-19. Well, she eventually got her way. She silenced John, but she could not silence the truth. Isaiah 48. We, as believers, were warned against judging others. It's all over the Bible. Unfairly or unrighteously, but Jesus does command right judgment. John 7:24. We are to be discerning. Colossians 1:9 and 1 Thessalonians 5:21. We are to preach the whole counsel of God, including the Bible's teaching on sin. Acts 20:27, 2 Timothy 4:7. We are to gently confront erring brothers or sisters in Christ. Galatians 6:1. And we are to practice church discipline. Matthew 18:15-17. And guess what? We are to speak the truth in love. Ephesians 4:15. Well, that's it for fish. First I see Kim. My name is Linda. And until next time.